A massive shark is spotted roaming the waters. A biologist and a cop team up to stop the shark. An ignorant mayor who does nothing to actually solve the situation because of some event taking place. People getting eaten left and right. Welcome to Easily Entertained. I'm your host, Bryson Olson, here to give you all the latest on all things entertainment. Today we are talking about Under Paris. I know. Almost sounds like I was describing Jaws, but Under Paris is a new Netflix film capitalizing on the big shark trend that always kind of sweeps through Hollywood and the movies, especially during the summertime. I feel like it's a big summer blockbuster type of movie. It's having some movie with a big shark, but does it really compare to the other major hits that big sharks have been a part of? I don't know. Let's find out. So, like I described at the very beginning of the episode, a lot of the major plot points in Under Paris are very, very similar to Jaws, like almost to the T. Like it's a little bit uncanny, like almost like they ripped it off. Because in the movie, Paris is set to hold a triathlon, kind of as like a precursor to them holding the Olympics that actually does take place in real life this year. However, a huge mako shark that was discovered by one of our main characters, Sophia, who is a biologist. So she found this shark and it has made its way to France and is living in the Seine River along with others of its kind. They're kind of in like this little, in this little nest area in the catacombs under Paris. And together, the biologist who discovered the shark, as well as a cop who works for the Paris Police Department, they team up. You know, they get together and they decide, let's guide it out or kill it. And, you know, people are thinking they're kind of going a little bit crazy. They're like, that's maybe too much. Of course there are sharks there. It's like, that can happen. You know, bull sharks can live in fresh water, but it's a mako shark, which is only a saltwater shark. So something's not right. And so they want to guide it back out to sea and save people from being eaten because the biologist team was eaten by the shark. So don't really want more people to be eaten. So, you know, it's kind of like every other shark movie that has been written and kind of taken from Jaws. And, you know, they say if it's not broke, don't fix it. But when it comes to movies, I feel like we want something different. We don't always want to see the same thing over and over again. So, you know, and I know it's a foreign movie because it's all in French, which I actually didn't know when I had started watching it. I thought they were going to switch to English, and they didn't, which is totally fine. I was watching the whole thing in French, and it was still, you know, decent. It wasn't terrible. And like some foreign ripoffs are pretty bad. But this one, it's not like terrible. Like it's still shot pretty well. I feel like the camera work is pretty decent. Most of the acting is good, even if some of the lines are a bit corny. The characters still take themselves pretty seriously and actually still act pretty good, even if their lines that they were given aren't the best. Like some of them are pretty corny, and so you're like, that's a little bit ridiculous. And there are some good tense moments, which, you know, when you have a shark movie, that's kind of what you got to have. You're going to play on those tense horror thriller type moments, and that I kind of like. But what's not great about this kind of Jaws ripoff is the CGI. The CGI shark for Under Paris is pretty bad. And considering that Jaws used, I don't think, any CGI at the time. I think it was all just practical because I don't think CGI was really a big thing. That still holds up a bit better than this CGI shark in Under Paris. It's not great. It doesn't look very good. It looks very out of place. It is not very believable, and it takes you out of a movie almost instantly as soon as you see it. I do think they have some moments where they're like images of actual sharks. But a lot of the time, like when they're under the catacombs or you're seeing the big shark, it is very, very obvious that it's not real. And probably some of that is due to their lower budget, because I was looking it up. Their budget was maybe like 18-ish million. And so it's not like a high budget. It's compared to like something like The Meg, where that is a CGI shark, but I feel like that one blends a bit more with the world and doesn't feel as out of place as this one did. And sometimes there are ways around it. You can kind of hide it with lighting, but they didn't always do that. Sometimes it was full front and center. You're like, oh, that's not great. And I think that's partially why they did try to use the Seine River as an example, because it's just a murkier river, but they didn't really use that to their full advantage, I think, half the time. So that didn't really help. But however, despite all this, most of it is pretty decent and still watchable as a movie, so that I can kind of forgive. Sometimes you can forgive the overuse of CGI if the movie's at least, it's still kind of entertaining. Except there is one bit of the movie that I'm not really a fan of, and it's particularly one character that is she's just the worst. So Under Paris tried to take part of the approach that The Meg did as well. It's a bit more upfront than The Meg had it, but it's kind of like the idea of like, hey, you shouldn't really be trying to mess with nature. This is how things kind of go a little bit crazy, like kind of like Jurassic Park, where don't really mess with nature because it'll come back to bite you in the butt. And they kind of added a bit more of like the conservation type of stuff in this one, which, that's great, because at the beginning of the movie, the biologist and her team, they visit the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is this huge floating area of trash that drifts around the ocean, and that's really bad. And they talk about how it's affecting the ocean, so that's good. I'm glad that they're talking about that. It is something that should be taken a lot more seriously. However, this absolutely moronic, impulsive, self-centered, self-righteous character by the name of Mika is so up on her high horse that she has to put everybody in danger. She runs this little organization that's trying to push for it's like an environmentalism organization. So they're trying to push for the oceans to be cleared and stuff. That's not a bad message. It's not bad. And, the biologist is trying to lead the shark back out to sea. And to do so, they have a tracker on it, because it was a shark that was originally tracked to just track sharks. And those are usually public knowledge. And Mika and her little environmentalism team, they are tracking the shark, and they're like, oh, cool, let's make sure everything's going normal. And it goes into the scent. And Mika's the one who actually contacts Sophia to actually be like, hey, the shark is in the river for some reason. I don't know why. But when Sophia gets the cops to actually go and track down the shark to try and get it back out to sea, Mika, this idiot, so dumb, decides to get her team to turn off the tracker so they can't kill the shark. They weren't going to kill it. They were going to trank it, and while it's asleep, get it back out into the ocean. Great. Easy plan. But now they're going to die because they don't know for sure where it will be. And even if they thought they got it back out, they wouldn't know for sure because they can't track it anymore. So dumb. And then later in the movie, I don't even remember the exact reason why, she's doing this thing trying to communicate with the sharks or something. And she decides to swim with them. And we already know that, due to all this environment crap, the sharks aren't acting normal. They're going into fresh water. They're getting a little bit more aggressive for some reason. So naturally, the sharks kill her as soon as she gets in the water, which is idiot. How did she, I don't know why she was doing any of this. There's no real motivation. I understand save the sharks, but why are you being such an idiot in doing so? It's so dumb. What is wrong with this girl? So, that kind of just happens. They had a peaceful solution. She had to ruin it. Whatever. So it just kind of makes me think of 47 meters down, which I kind of enjoy, but the characters make such stupid decisions while not actually having a reason to do so. Like, you don't have to just be an idiot. You can still make a logical decision, and like, even if they're making stupid decisions but they have reason to, that makes it more believable because they're just acting more out of emotion rather than logic. But it's not the case. They're just making stupid decisions for the sake of making stupid decisions. And that's kind of a trope of these shark movies, which brings me to our last topic of shark cinema. Because I saw somebody talking about this not very long ago, probably around the time that I was watching Under Paris, so like this last week, and I kind of thought it was pretty interesting. So ever since Jaws, and probably even before Jaws came out, there has been this just interesting obsession of having sharks in the movies. And, sharks aren't like super aggressive in real life. They can be, usually if provoked. But humans are big, and typically a shark is not going to go out of its way to get big prey unless it knows, like, it could actually kill it. And, like, obviously they can kill humans pretty easily, but that's usually not their prey of choice. And so they're not really aggressive towards humans most of the time unless provoked. But movies keep being made about sharks. And, you just have, like, Jaws, The Meg, 47 Meters Down, Sharknado, Under Paris. You just kind of have all these different shark movies. And while obviously not all of them are great, let's talk about Sharknado. That's a bad movie. There's just something so cinematic about having sharks in it, because they're just interesting creatures. And I think probably the reason for it is there's probably a few. One, I think we, like as in the average person, don't really know a whole lot about sharks. Like, obviously biologists do, and I think that's like usually taken into account. But the average person isn't going to encounter a shark most of the time, and I think everyone kind of wants to see something they don't fully understand on the big screen, even if it's in a scary context. That helps add to the fear factor because we don't fully understand it. They also kind of have a scary look. So in that sense, it helps put them more into those horror kind of contexts, which is usually the context that they're put into. They have sharp teeth. They are super streamlined. They're well built for the ocean, so much better than we are, and could absolutely take us out. And so they kind of just feel a little bit out of this world. Like, they almost feel a little alien. You're like, wow, that's kind of crazy. And that brings me to my last point on that, which is like, the beauty of sharks is something just so fascinating to it, because we share a world with these beautiful but really like cunning and dangerous creatures, and they inhabit a whole different part of the planet that we don't really ever touch other than like the basic surface of. And so we all kind of want to learn a bit more about them, and that like really gets us in seats in the theaters, even if it's not really an accurate representation of what sharks are. It still gets us in the seats. And even in cases like Under Paris, where it is not the greatest film, sharks are going to get us to watch it. You see a shark in a movie and you're like, yeah, I'm probably going to watch that. That's probably going to be a fun movie. I'm going to have a good time, even if it's not a great movie. And we always enjoy them ripping through the big screen, pun intended. And, they always leave us easily entertained. So that was my thoughts on Under Paris. If you watched it, let us know what you thought. And speaking of what we thought, let's get into our rating. So our easily entertained rating scale from least to worst is garbage, once is fine, right mood, quotable, go to, and all day, every day. Obviously, I don't really think this is a go-to or an all-day, everyday, which is probably like 90% of what I rate things, just because, like I said, this is easily entertained, so I'm entertained by a lot of things, so I usually like to rewatch a lot of things. This one, however, like I said, there's a lot of other shark movies. I would probably rather watch Jaws or The Meg a lot more, and so I'm probably going to put Under Paris at right mood. And before we go, we also have our question of the week. This is a question designed to get you interested in the conversation about this week's topic. And since we've been talking about sharks, this question of the week is, would you ever dive with sharks? I am on the fence because on one side I think it would be really cool, but I've also seen all the movies, so I don't know how smart of an idea that is. But I do think that I probably would. I think for the experience, if I knew it was safe, I would probably do it. I think that would be pretty cool. And it would probably depend on like what kind of sharks. I don't know if I would do like the cage dive thing, but if it's like swimming on a reef with like nurse sharks and stuff, that I would probably do. I think that sounds pretty cool. And so that was Under Paris. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's episode. Be sure to respond to our question of the week in the comments on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, wherever. Let us know. And until next time, we'll see ya. Bye. You have been entertained.